Welcome to the 5 a.m. grind. Horace, what's up, man?
Not much. What's up with you?
It's good. It's good. It's good. You know, it's good. Yeah, it's good. Life is good. Business is good. Work is good.
Yeah.
Weather's warming up.
Yeah. You know what? This year, it's not just like the weather I'm looking forward to. Like, I am looking forward to the weather.
Yeah, because
I will look forward every summer, but this is a little special.
I agree because of what, the lockdown?
Yeah, because I'm hoping we could finally, get those second doses. I think as of today, our first dose is higher than America.
Correct.
The States, like,
it is.
Not like by a percent.
By a little bit. By a little bit.
And then, like, the government kind of announced that the second shots are going to be administered faster.
Correct.
So I'm hoping if we could push up to like 50% by end of June.
We were very critical of our vaccine rollout here in Canada, but it looks like we've picked it up. You know, we're coming from behind.
I don't know.
From behind.
My thing is more like it was a geopolitical thing. There's a lot of vaccines kind of diverted to first buyers. Mostly the States, so our neighbors down in the South. And then when that like demand dried up a little bit, because they're having a harder time kind of pushing the first vaccines above where it is right now. Mm-hmm. And so then I think a lot of the supply, and as soon as it opened up, the government was very good. They just vaccinated everybody in a month or two. It was done 6 weeks, I think. And like, it's like record timing, I would say.
Yeah, so public service announcement. If you haven't gotten your shot, go get it.
We don't endorse anything legally today.
All right, so for this week's podcast, I thought we'd cover, we're coming out of COVID lockdowns, and we just talked about it. And it's this whole trend about remote work. Is it just a fad? All right, so the questions we're going to cover today are as follows. Is remote work a fad? Number 2, what do you like about remote work? Number 3, does productivity decrease if you're working remotely? 4, is it hard to give good client service when you're working remotely? And number 5, how do you maintain a strong company culture when working remotely? All right? So, Horace, in your opinion, is working remote a fad?
Yes and no. I think.
Come on, man. What is these yes and no answers? Just pick one.
I would say if I had to pick, I'd say it's a fad.
Okay.
And the reason I say no is because I don't think it's a fad across the board, across every industry. There might be some industries, a few industries that like remote work is fine.
Yeah.
For the most part, I think it's something it's a fad, definitely. Mm-hmm. I would say, for example, the legal industry, for sure, it's a fad. I mean, the way firms grow, the way you share information is by working together within the same place, under the same roof, as weird as it sounds. You can't get that same information. You would if you were like through any kind of chat. I know our firm uses Microsoft Teams. You can't get that same information, right? Just because, like, I know that when working, there's a lot of habits that you see the other experienced employees or people in a profession have that you would never ever imagine to ask.
Yeah.
Right? If you hadn't seen it. But when you see it, you're like, oh, that like works. And you pick it up. You get what I mean? So there's a lot of knowledge being transferred by everybody working under the same roof. And so I think for that one reason, that's the biggest reason that it becomes like a fad, because it's just very hard to train people. Now, if you can, like, that's for a lot of the nuanced stuff. I think within both of our industries, I think there's a lot of nuance within tax and law. Or accounting and law. There's a lot of things where you can't just automate this. Where you can automate it, I think there's a push to automate it even more. Then it's not remote working. It's just like your work is done.
Yeah. I don't know. So I'll take the other side of the coin and say remote work, at least some of remote work, is here to stay.
Yeah.
Some of it is. I do agree with you that people have short memories, and people will be like, they'll go back to the office and say, we'll work a hybrid schedule. And then slowly, you'll see this transition happen. People will be like, well, no, we actually expect our employees to be in the office 5 days a week. So people will eventually, I think, go back to the way it was, because that's not just how human beings are. I hope some of it stays, and I think some of it will. I'm optimistic. Some of it will, because employees, especially some engineers, even in Silicon Valley, are not asking specifically for a couple of days of remote work to be able to work from home or flexibility, blah, 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 etc. I think companies as well will realize that they don't need this much office space. Let's be honest. For a lot of accounting firms, and I would imagine law firms as well, the biggest costs are you have your revenue, your second biggest cost is people, and then your third biggest cost is usually rent. Yeah. Right? So if you can do away with some of that rent, it's a huge cost savings. So you got to consider it to some extent and be like, could we reduce our footprint? Could we make it a bit smaller? Should we have people some days in the office? Maybe some days you don't. Stuff like that. So I hope some of it stays. I think some of it will stay. Yeah. But remains to be seen.
I think it definitely it will stay for a lot of industries. I think even if it stays for legal, I think our law firm would be moving. Like I would never do I'm not even a big fan of hybrid, to be honest. Like, what's the point of a hybrid day? It's like I feel like by coming to the office, there's the share of information. You're also more motivated to work. Yeah. Right. There's very few people who have that self-motivation and that self-discipline. Yeah. To be working for that kind of time by themselves. Yeah. And when you're with other people, you kind of like you're helping one another kind of work, and you see other people doing things, and you're doing things yourself too. So I do feel like there's a different atmosphere working at, like, even throughout this pandemic, I've been coming to the office. Like there's nobody comes to the office except
you're
me.
Here alone.
There's no clients coming, no nobody. Right? Yeah. And I still come. Yeah. Because even though now, like, all of our client meetings are all online. Yeah. And it shifted the way we did work. In a lot of ways, it got better. But at the same time, I come to the office because it's a different mindset. I don't know how to explain it. You know what I mean? Like, my desk, my everything. Yeah, like,
you're at work.
It's a shift of, like, where I am and how I do things. And, like all the things are in the right places. And at home, I mean, if you have a home office, I don't know. I still would say there's distractions because I know, like, I live at home with my parents. I'm sure when you're home more often, there's always, like, a question of, like, oh, can something be done together? Can we do this or do that or whatever? You know what I mean? So there's always somebody pulling you in some direction. Parents or wife or whatever it is, siblings, your kids, whoever it is, your neighbors. There is definitely a pull. There's no way that you could be living at working from home, and there's nobody else. It's kind of like
asking for your attention or time. Got it. What do you like about remote work? So understood, you've done a bit of a hybrid approach. You've come into your office being here alone and being able to work. But what would you say you like about remote work in general? Are there some things that you thought discovered maybe that, okay, this is actually an advantage. This is something that's made this process a bit smoother. What are some of those things?
So meetings is one of those. Right. Meetings are much shorter now.
Yeah.
Right. You're very much to the point.
They're very much focused.
You're very focused, whether they're like team meetings or whether there is client meetings. You're not just kind of chewing the fat, as they say, right? You're not just talking about nothing. You're not like whatever. It's very much, this is the purpose of our conversation. It's good for me in that sense that, okay, the conversation, like our meetings are lasting, what would take 30 minutes, an hour is now like 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Yeah. In the long run, is that good? I don't know, because if a client comes in and they're talking to us and they build a relationship, that's definitely an issue. Yeah. So then our firm is definitely figuring out ways on how we can build that relationship with the client, even though the meetings have been squeezed. So, but there's definitely it's good change in that, like, everybody's to the point. There's no, oh my God, whatever. There's no fluff. There's none of that. Yeah. Or very little, if any.
I'd say the same thing. Client meetings are very much focused, to the point, direct. You are there to meet for a reason. There's no reason to have the meeting without a reason. Every meeting has a purpose. Yeah. So that's always nice. I'd say, like, people who work, though, at employers and stuff like that, what you are starting to notice is a lot more meetings being scheduled on your calendar, simply because a lot of people are missing that office interaction. Yeah. What something could have been said by, turning around and telling someone within 5 minutes, hey, could you do this, or let's talk about this?
Yeah.
Now it takes like a scheduled 30-minute WebEx or Zoom call, which is like annoying because you could have taken 5 minutes and just told me what this is.
The fluff is scheduled.
The fluff is scheduled.
Exactly,
exactly, right? It's like, oh, we're going to talk for 5 minutes. I really want to talk about this, but we'll have other things to talk about too. It's like, come on, man. It is that like your entire calendar gets filled with, online meetings, WebEx and Zoom and stuff like that. So that is annoying. But I'd say in some industries, yes, some of the meetings, some of the discussions have become way more focused, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Any other pros of working remotely? I think for me, the flexibility is always nice because sometimes now working remotely, I'm working from home. If I want to work out in the middle of my day, it's a bit more possible. If I want to run an errand in the middle of my day, it's possible. It's not such a chore to have to leave the office, go to your appointment, come back.
Yeah.
It's a bit more flexible, which I like.
But I feel like that could be integrated into the workplace. And that's something I never liked about working. And I would never do that in my workplace where people are like, oh my God. Like, yeah, when there's work to be done, you do the work. But you also have a life. And that needs to be understood. And then, like, if you want to take a break and then, not everybody's a 9 to 5. You got to put in your time, however that is, right? And be there when you need to be. But if you can leave for a quick workout, if you can leave for an appointment, that shouldn't be frowned upon. I think a lot of people in a lot of workplaces, they were hesitant, because people are going to think, oh my God, I'm not working, I'm away from my desk, and there's a pressure to stay there.
Yeah.
So, and especially if work is something that it takes a decent part of your life, especially like at an office environment, like that definitely should be. I would never have people working for me saying, like, yo, I'm me telling them, hey, listen, you can't go to a meeting or an appointment, or that you can't work out in the middle of the day, provided, like, there's
the work is getting done.
And it's getting done, and if there's an appointment with a client, you're not going to be like, all right, you know what, peace out, I'm going to go to the gym.
Yeah.
Right?
Be reasonable about it.
Yeah. So as long as you've got your responsibilities down, right, the rest, do what you got to do. Because it's life, man. You're spending so much time.
Yeah, agreed. Do you think productivity has decreased as we've moved into this whole remote working environment? Have you felt a decrease in productivity? Have you seen the opposite? Have you seen an increase in productivity? Right. How do you feel about that?
I think my personal opinion is that productivity may have stayed the same, or maybe even spiked in the beginning, as you kind of carry the same habits to working from home. But now you don't have to travel. Now you don't have to do all these other things, but those habits are there. But then as, like, you sustain that habit, productivity could dip because you're now replacing new habits with the old habit, right? So you're no longer, a lot of people, like, don't remember what an office life is because they've been out for over a year, right? And so they replaced their habits with other habits, and I don't know what those habits are. It's easy to, like, in the morning, I don't want to start at this time, I want to start at that time. Because nobody's kind of overlooking me, so maybe I could. And maybe I'm going to now start an hour later and try to squeeze that work into the 2 hours after, and so you're rushing through everything, and then the quality goes down, right? So those kind of things I would imagine would be happening. I sometimes do see it. I do see kind of individuals, they take on tasks just a little bit more reluctantly.
Just working from home?
Yeah, because there's like, oh, you know what? Oh, really? Because I think in their mindset, it's like, you know what? Either I could be doing this, or I could be watching TV or Netflix or whatever else, right? And so I don't want to really do that. Whereas at work, when you're at work, there is no other. You got to do this. Then you're like, you know what? Like, I'm here. Might as well do something.
Might as well do it.
Right?
Get it done.
So I'm just saying, not like, I mean, I'm being pessimistic. I think there's a lot of diligent guys and girls out there. But I do feel that just it's natural. It's natural, like, because work for most people, right, for a lot of people, may not be something, like, it's at the end of the day, it's work. It's called work. It's not called, like, playtime or anything.
Yeah.
So there is a pushing up against something that is uncomfortable. And different people deal with it different ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think?
So productivity-wise, I think, it's ebbs and flows. To be honest, in the beginning, I was very productive and very much to the point. It was very efficient. And some days the whole toll of like, I guess maybe it's because we've been in a pandemic, because there's that weighing on you too. Productivity has somewhat, varied, and then sometimes you're not as productive. But I'd say on the whole, it's more or less the same. I didn't see, a drastic difference between working in the office and working at home. Because when something has to be done, it has to be done. Doesn't matter where you are. That's the philosophy I operate with, at least. And I think a lot of people do the same. But I guess it depends from person to person. It's not the same.
Man. I think you are by far one of the most disciplined people I know.
Okay.
By far.
Thanks.
By far.
I appreciate that. Right? I would disagree, but...
No. Like, by far, you're the most disciplined and one of the most hardworking people I know, right? I would say majority of the people are not doing what you do, without a doubt. I have no, doubt about that. So when you say, your productivity is the same, right? Yeah. That's 100%. I agree that with you, it could go up, right? But when you say your productivity is the same, then I'm worrying about everybody else, man. That means everybody else definitely it's gone down. If you're saying it's the same for you, right? Because I think you're very diligent, you're very responsible, you're very on top of things. You know how to you know yourself enough to organize yourself, right?
Correct.
I don't think for a lot of people, right, it's, again, especially people earlier on in their career, perfectly normal not to have acquired those traits or those habits.
Correct.
It's not like you went and started your first job with all these habits.
No, I didn't.
Right?
I developed them over time.
Yeah. So then, if you're at home, and who are you looking at to build these habits, and there's so many distractions around, it's like if you're going on, if you want to eat healthy, right, you're not going to keep junk food around the house. The first thing is to get rid of that. Same thing with productivity. You're not going to keep distractions around. First thing is you're going to get rid of that.
Correct.
And then you're going to figure out how to develop the right habits. So I feel like a workplace, a physical workplace, is more like getting rid of the junk food. You're getting rid of the distractions so that you can focus in on everything else.
Yeah.
There's very few people, and I'm definitely not one of them, that if there's a Kit Kat on the table, I'm going to oh, you know what? I should be eating healthy, but this tastes real good, so I'm going to eat it right now. So I'm one of them. That's why I come to the office. I don't want distractions. I know, I'll spend some amount of time on YouTube, some amount of time on, Netflix or whatever it is, just wasting time.
Yeah. So true. All right, so 2 more questions. So question number 4 is going to be, is it hard to give good client service when working remotely? And the example I'll cite here is, we're coming out of lockdown. The U.S. is obviously ahead of us when it comes to coming out of lockdown. We've heard for some of the banks in the U.S., I think it was J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Wells Fargo, they're like, we'd like to resume in-person meetings and bring our employees back into the office as soon as possible, right? They want to be fully staffed, go back to pre-COVID life, no working remote, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. Do you think that working remotely does affect client service, or can you maintain the same client service?
I think you can maintain the same client service, definitely. You know what? There's just, in terms of output, okay, so in terms of doing the work itself, you can maintain the same stuff remotely, right? If somebody comes to me and it says, I need this kind of legal work done, definitely. However, there's a lot of things in and around that relationship that do suffer. So it's very different for me to see you in person and speak to you and build that relationship and really have a connection so that we're working together in the long run and get you to trust me. Right? Yeah. That does not change how I'm going to treat whatever work you're bringing me with, right? Correct. But if you trust me, then we have a stronger relationship, and that work is done more easily. But it's not going to change the output. You get what I mean? It changes the client's understanding and interpretation and the intake of what is given to them.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times, as bad as this sounds, we will be doing work in the background, and then a lot of clients are like, well, this guy, the firm only saw us for 15 minutes. Yeah. They can't, you know what I mean? They couldn't have been doing all this stuff. What are they charging for? You know what I mean? And so a lot of it then now has shifted into remotely showing the clients what work was being done on their file behind the scenes. You know what I mean? And letting them know, you know what, it's not like we're Netflixing when you're not around. Yeah. Right? Your work is being done correctly, and this is the stuff that's being done. that's a little bit more different, right? When somebody comes to the office and they're like, okay, a client comes in, I need this work done. I'll be like, all right, let's have a conversation about whatever this is. And then they'll see things, it's physical. They're like, all right, there's desks here, there's a printer here. There must be something must be getting done.
Yeah, something must be going on.
Right? As weird as it sounds, they got a waiting area, they got a boardroom, whatever it is, right? And it becomes a very different understanding as opposed to, I was just in my living room when I signed. What could they have done?
Yeah, so true. I'd say this, the way to answer this question, the good client service, like you said, I think the work doesn't suffer. It's the same output.
Yeah.
But maybe the way client service suffers is the whole building a relationship, showing them, look, I really cared about whatever it is that you gave me. Yeah. I put my heart and soul into it. Yeah. That sort of thing sometimes goes away, which I think is quite key to develop those client relationships, to win work, to be able to get an engagement and some files. I think that's the part that suffers, because customer service and client service is like, it's all encompassing.
Yeah.
It's a journey. Like you always say this, it's a journey. You're walking them through a buying cycle, They learn about your brand, your firm, they engage you with their work, you do the work, you deliver it, you stay in touch, blah, 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 blah. It's an entire journey. Maybe some parts of that journey suffers, but I'd say, it's the same result. At the end of the day, closing in a house, doing your tax return, it's going to be the same result remotely or not.
But it also presents an opportunity. One of the things, for example, I would say is what Apple did. So Apple, when it would launch something, you know this better, we're working at Apple, but
can't talk on behalf of Apple.
Okay, but my perspective, right?
Go ahead, it's your perspective.
So my perspective alone, right? Legal disclaimer. I thought that what was done pretty nicely was when they would launch a new product, there would be like that meeting or whatever it is, a conference.
Keynote, keynote.
What is it? Conference?
It's called a keynote.
Yeah. So, and that was very like, oh wow, like the CEO, right, is on the stage. They're going through different things. A lot of people are there. There's an energy there, and you're excited, all that stuff, which was good, right? But then when they shifted it to like an online or remote experience, I thought like the video was done very nicely. It's very like professional. It's like, I don't know, it's like watching a Hollywood movie almost, how the transitions are done and all the graphics and like how just crispy, clear the colors. It's a very immersive experience to get you really, to replace that energy in the room with something that just captures you and captivates you. And so I feel like that's the opportunity. And that is something that even firms like myself we're captivating on or capturing or trying to capture. We're giving content to the clients to bring them into the experience, to show them why they're working with us or why they want to work with us. As opposed to when they came in, yes, it was good. The downside of it was also a very lazy experience because there's not as many people involved. It could be a very low budget pitch because it could be me and one person or another, like 2 or 3 people. You come in and the client comes in and you have a conversation and you've done that pitch several times and you can build a relationship, and not saying that there's anything wrong with it, but when you're creating a video, like there's a lot of elements involved. It's not just the content. It's not, you got videographers, graphic designers, you got a bigger team to kind of develop all of that. But I think it's like so much more worth it too. It's something that, I'm personally excited to move my firm towards that kind of approach.
Nice. So it's like a combination of video and in-person interaction. Is that what you're saying?
So I want like
the client experience.
Client experience is like, it's turning into you're now leaning more onto the content side of it, and then you're attaching.
I like that. It's like omni-channel. I can go from like all. I hate to use this, but attacking from all sides.
No, but
it's like you need a presence online. You need a presence in person, so they keep remembering and knowing your firm and your brand.
Yeah, and the video thing, like one of the other good things is sometimes you're having an off day, right?
You want to do something quick.
Yeah, and like you don't pitch to the client properly in person, but with the video, it's going to be the same,
it's true. It's consistency. That's very true. It's a consistent
you can nail it and you can understand it. And then like there are certain other things where like, all right, well, when you're doing it in person, you can they can customize the pitch, but even with like these videos, you can, I think, make them so that they appeal to everybody.
Yeah.
Or your target audience, and make several ones that
they can look at.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So last question. How do you maintain a strong company culture when working remotely? Is that something you've struggled with? Culture, you know, a lot of people focus on people, culture building when they're building big companies and scaling. How do you maintain that when you're working remotely?
So to start off, man, like culture and community is extremely, extremely, extremely important. Because you want the people that are working at your firm, your organization, to feel like they're part of something. We're just social creatures, right? And at the same time that other people have their back. If they don't know something, they can lean on somebody else. They can speak to them and really understand, like, okay, we're in this together. You're not alone. So for that kind of stuff, I don't think I found any kind of real good fix. I haven't found any kind of real, like, you have to, like, you know what, like any strong culture in an organization, you're not only staying at the office, you're doing stuff outside the office as well. The company should be bringing you together for other things, right? Like retreats or whatever it is, so that you guys can have, like, you can bond. You know, if you're sitting next to somebody for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, you know, day in, day out, you want to be friends with that person. You want to know that person, and you should, right, to build that relationship. And so that, like, if you have any questions, you can ask them, and then they can ask you. But for remotely, it's very, very difficult. What it has turned into for me is I have to be more vigilant in being more vocal about organizational objectives, in letting everybody know what the company's up to, where we're kind of moving, giving them that foresight, giving them that understanding of where we're headed, so that they do, and in a way to kind of bring them in and make them feel like they're a part of something, you know, part of something meaningful, a meaningful change that we're kind of bringing about. That's kind of my perspective.
No, I like that. It's actually a good perspective. I think you and I were talking about this offline as well. And what you said was, which I thought was a really good point, one of the things that happen in an office environment is just that organic discussion between employees and stuff like that. So let's say employee number one is struggling with an issue or how to solve something. They can easily ask somebody else for a solve. Or sometimes, you know, you get trained just watching other people do stuff in the office. It's sort of like you're never in that situation. You learn by watching, right? So that has certainly disappeared because now you're working remotely. You don't have the opportunity to be able to do that. I'd say, you know, creating a culture, you just have to be very deliberate about it in a remote environment. You have to sort of schedule the meetings, schedule the check-ins with your employees. And maybe, you know, sometimes learn that everything can be done virtually, and sometimes you do need to meet in person. Sometimes, whether it's for a social activity, at a restaurant, company retreat, strategy building, whatever it is, right? To make people feel like they're part of something bigger. So that's sometimes important too. You need to be deliberate about it.
And a lot of times, you know what I find myself, like if somebody comes and asks me a question, like how is this done? I can answer right away, and I can make it short and sweet, but I don't. Sometimes, if given the time circumstance, I'll be like, go ask that person. Right. Not to be an ass, right?
Yeah.
Not to be difficult or anything, because I want to create that office interaction outside of the office. Because I want them to know each other, and I want them to have as many discussions with one another to get to, like, especially if you onboard somebody new.
Yeah.
It becomes difficult. It becomes very difficult to, like, do something where they get to know everybody. So you have to kind of almost manufacture those kind of collisions that you would have in an office, going to the kitchen, going to the water cooler, going to wherever, right?
Yeah.
Those natural discussions that happen. So I'd want that. I'd be like, yo, even if it's a small question, go ask them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that, and then that kind of makes them more comfortable, right? Because then also the other person knows in a way too that this person's asking me because I told them to ask him. So now everybody's kind of making that effort, you know, to kind of be one, like, close to one another, to interact, to talk to one another. So
got it. So quick takeaways: remote work, here to stay, here to go.
Here to go.
Here to go. All right, and you heard my perspective. I think remote work is here to stay, and I hope it will. All right. So we'll catch you guys in the next episode.
Take care, guys.
Take care.